Hello and welcome to our Wednesday episode of Nieves Law Firm Live. I am here with Corrine Bielejeski from East Bay Bankruptcy Law and Financial Planning.
Yep.
Right? Okay, so what I'm doing today is I'm just going to be interviewing Corrine about what she does, what her practice is all about, how she got into her practice, how long she's been doing it for, and of course some of the crossover with bankruptcy and criminal defense. So if there's anybody who has any questions or any feedback, she's going to answer them, but of course I've prepared some questions to dig in a little deeper. So Corrine, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into bankruptcy law.
So I've been practicing for about 11 or 12 years now, and I actually just fell into bankruptcy law. I was a little second-year law student and didn't have a job and saw this posting, bankruptcy law, and started working at that firm, and I loved it. I love helping people, and I also like math, so it was a good combination.
Probably one of the few people who like math.
I know. We all end up tax attorneys or bankruptcy attorneys, I think. So it was a good fit for me.
Okay. And what did you do to, prepare for being a bankruptcy lawyer? Any internships or jobs that helped with that?
So first off, in law school, I took a lot of the numbers courses, so tax and that sort of thing. And then my last year of law school, I took an estate planning seminar. And when my professor found out that I had gotten a clerkship for a bankruptcy judge, he decided that my entire term project was going to be on asset protection in bankruptcy using the new bankruptcy code. And I say new, but that's 2005 already. So we still call it the new code as opposed to the old code, which was 82.
Oh, wow. And did you go straight into having your own practice, or what made you start your own firm?
So I was fortunate enough to clerk. So I clerked right here in Oakland for our local bankruptcy court, and then I did that for 2 years, and then worked for a solo attorney for a few years, and that was high volume practice, tons of clients, only 2 attorneys, so it was a little stressful at times. And I decided, I didn't like the commute all the time, and I thought, hey, maybe I want to start a family. So I went solo, and I've been successfully solo for 6 or 7 years now, and it's great. So my office is now out in Antioch, where I live.
Okay.
But my court is still here because everyone in Alameda and Contra Costa counties comes to Oakland because it's actually a federal practice, and that's our closest federal court.
And so what are the things that you like the most about having your solo practice, or that you like the least?
So one of the things that I really like is just being able to help people. They call me when they're stressed, when they're nervous about money, sometimes really guilty because, especially if they're the provider for the family, it can be really hard. And not being able to pay for the car or the house, really stressful. And so I've been doing this long enough that I worked during the recession and saw just how that was impacting people. And so what I like is if they come in stressed and worried, and then they leave happy. And either that's with a bankruptcy or with a debt plan, or just saying, look, you just rearrange it and do this and this and this, and that'll get you there. And so that's what I love about what I do.
Right. I can totally relate to that, right? Just in criminal defense, everybody comes in stressed and worried, and all they're looking for is for somebody to just alleviate that stress in that moment so that they can have a sense of normalcy in their life again.
And also to have somebody there with them, because that's part of it, is not only are we an attorney who knows the law, but we're also there as a confidant, as a counselor, to try and help them get through whatever it is that they're getting through. And that's also the hard thing, though, is because a lot of times what brings people to me is an income problem.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, I can't help people get a job. So all I can do is try and figure out, what can we do now? Because I don't know if you know this, but the main reason people file is because of job loss, medical, and divorce. Okay. Those are the top 3. And so, it's not because people are here because they racked up tons of credit card debt, buying a boat. It's just regular living.
It's life.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the struggles that you've experienced, as a woman business owner, also running your practice, some struggles that you may have experienced in the bankruptcy field, or that interacting with your clients?
So I was just mentioning before, occasionally I'll run into an attorney who's perhaps not as civil as other people. But I have to say, generally, my bar is very nice. What I've seen is occasionally I've had people call me up for advice, and then senior attorneys ask me for advice, and they go, oh, thanks, kiddo, and things like that. Or you walk in the room and you're assumed to be the secretary, or you're assumed to be
the defendant.
Or assumed to be the defendant. And as you can tell, I don't take myself super seriously. So when I'm meeting with clients, I try not to do the full suit thing. You have to possibly go to court at any minute. So, criminal law, you have to have the jacket so you can go if you need to. With us, I mean, it's, I try and be as calming as I can.
Yeah.
But again, I can't help every person who comes through, and I will tell you, I had one client come in and they told me all about their assets, all about their debts, and I said, unfortunately, you can't file because you have so much cash that you could pay off all of your debt. And she cursed at me, threw open the door, yelled at me to my next clients, and then kept walking. And I was just blown away.
Right.
That never happened. So skip forward 2 months, and I'm waiting in Oakland to go into my hearing for when we meet with the trustee, and there's the woman in line ahead of me. She had gone with some other attorney, and she just, oh, Corrine, hi, and gave me this great big hug, and then moved on. And so it was just, all I could think of was I must have been the first person to give her that advice, and it was just so overwhelming. But yeah, it was so unexpected. And of course, I was like, okay, stranger, I will hug you back. But it was just, those are some things that you kind of get kind of odd, but yeah.
So what does your ideal client, look like? Not in terms of what they look like, but what is your ideal client?
Someone who is just interested or worried about their finances. What I try to do is I go over their income, their expenses, their assets, and their debts to figure out whether or not bankruptcy is a good idea. And then on the financial planning side, whether or not they are interested in saving for college or retirement or whatever that is, and just being open and honest about their finances. A lot of times it's just scary. I know there's a lot of people who have like a stack of mail. In fact, on my business cards, there's a stack of paper. That's usually what people come in with. It's just so stressful to talk about. And so being willing to pull your credit report and look at it, and being open to the advice I might give. And I'll tell people, look, the best thing you can do is sell your house. I know you don't want to do that, so let's look at the second option, or let's look at the third option. So the other thing I would say is come see me earlier. I tell people not to file bankruptcy all the time. So coming in to see an attorney earlier rather than later. When, I hate to say it, but during the recession, a lot of people used up their entire savings on a house that they ended up losing. And if they had seen me or one of the other bankruptcy attorneys, I mean, I can't speak for every other attorney, but I know I go through everything, and I'll tell people all the time, look, you don't need to file. Here's what you need to do. You need to let go of the rental. You need to sell the house while there's a little bit of equity and get into something smaller. Right? So,
that's the financial planning part of your practice, right?
Yeah, my goal, make everybody, as far as I can, stable financially.
So have you seen any crossover in your bankruptcy practice with criminal defense?
Yes. So kind of made some national news, not my case, but if you watch reality TV, there show Dance Moms and also Real Housewives of New Jersey. And both of those people filed a bankruptcy, and they either accidentally or intentionally omitted information. And that's considered fraud. And as you know, government takes that seriously. I don't know how they thought they could hide the reality show income, because that's what they had forgotten to include. But I mean, it's punishable by up to 10 years in jail and a $500,000 fine. And so it's a good cautionary tale for my clients. Look, we have to list all of your assets and all of your debts on the paperwork. It's the same thing with taxes. Everything you put on that form has to be correct. And if you intentionally omit something, that can be considered a crime.
how often do you come across clients that are omitting things, and do you have any liability in that? Like, are you responsible in any way if something's left off?
We are actually. The 2005 law change does say that I have to make an independent inquiry of something. So let's say that you are my client and I see you drive up in a Porsche. And then we're going through your cars and you don't say anything about the Porsche, but I've seen it and it's, okay, it's right out there. I have to ask you about it. And if I think that maybe you're hiding something, I may have to see the pink slip. I might have to do a little digging.
Right.
And I will say, there's a lot of bad information online. And people will say, oh, I didn't do that. I didn't list everything, and the trustee never found out. And unfortunately, if you don't list it, it never leaves the bankruptcy estate. So it doesn't matter if the trustee finds out a year from now, 5 years from now, they get that asset. So the other thing I've seen is people just in totally good faith will give a family member a car.
Mm-hmm.
They will be on joint title on a car, a bank account. They'll be on their mom's house, and they just won't think about it. Or maybe they'll transfer it. And there's a lot of rules about transferring something when you're in debt. So oftentimes I'll tell people, if you've done that, we just have to transfer it back in your name and we can still protect it. But again, I've seen people where, they are so scared of losing something, they would rather risk that. And unfortunately, oftentimes I'll say, look, I can't file unless we do A, B, C. And most of the time the clients are great about that. The other thing I will say is that sometimes people will lie to get credit, and that's also considered fraud. And so typically it's pretty clear. The client knows, I know, the creditor knows. And so we just say, okay, look, we're not going to discharge that debt, that's still going to be there. But everything else, my client still is entitled to discharge for. And so we'll see that occasionally. And that's, again, it's really rare. But, when people were getting those houses and it was, fill out whatever number on the form, you'd see those.
So have you come across anybody trying to discharge student loan debt?
I have, and unfortunately the test in the Ninth Circuit is incredibly difficult. So, you really have to maximize your income, minimize your expenses, and typically the judge wants to see that you've tried to do the 20-year repayment or you've tried to do something, and they want you to, if it's a federal loan, go all the way through the process first before you try and do it in the bankruptcy system. One of the circuits has a better test, and an organization I'm a part of called NACBA, the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys, is really pushing toward having a more reasonable test. But right now, unfortunately, it's really hard. So the ones locally that we have completely discharged, unfortunately, they were all cases where the debtor was dying. And it's horrible facts, but otherwise you really have to show that you are living below your means, that you've attempted to pay and can't. And, honestly, it's a very difficult test to meet.
So you seem to have a lot of experience with bankruptcy law. Have you ever, written any blogs, articles, publications about what you do?
I do, actually. So I'm also a member of the Contra Costa Counties Bar Association and our bankruptcy section. So last year I wrote a piece on some Ninth Circuit and state court law about spendthrift trusts and bankruptcy, and basically how a trustee can touch things that you didn't think they could.
What's a spendthrift trust?
Okay, a spendthrift trust is a trust where you say you're going to give a bunch of stuff to several beneficiaries, but the creditors can't touch the trust. It's only when it's given out to whoever. So if you gave me money through the spendthrift, and I had a big debt with, let's say, Capital One, they couldn't come after you, the trustee, for the money. They would have to wait until it was actually paid out to me and try and get it before I spend it. So it's a way of really protecting institutional money, family money, but also protecting somebody who is just not good with their spending.
Right.
99% of my clients are totally fine with their spending. I don't want anybody to get this wrong. But there is that 1% who cannot pass by Nordstrom's or Saks Fifth Avenue without buying something. Anyway, so for people like that, or people who like to eat out all the time, there's just, that credit card is always in hand. And so that's there to protect them. And what the court said is they really balanced those two behaviors and said, look, we're going to protect most of the trust, but a portion of it does come into the bankruptcy estate, and we're not going to take the stuff that's necessary to feed and clothe you,
Right.
but we're going to take the stuff above that. And then that goes to your creditors because you haven't been paying them. So it's really a weighing. And I have to say, I wrote on that and a couple of really, really boring U.S. Supreme Court decisions.
Just some boring U.S. Supreme Court decisions.
I will say, most of what we do is not the super sexy areas of law, although, two of the big bankruptcy decisions were from the Anna Nicole Smith cases. So two of our biggest boring civil procedure cases came out of that. But typically what we do is just day in, day out, get you into bankruptcy, get you that protection that you need, and then help you get some space from your creditors. And sometimes that means wiping all of your unsecured debt out. Sometimes that means you're in a 3 to 5 year repayment plan, but you're paying back old mortgage, missed mortgage payments, you're paying off the car. So it's really helping people out. And I do obviously like to talk about this area of law. One thing I forgot to mention before is that I've actually filed for people who are on probation, and that's totally fine. I can't get rid of restitution.
Right.
I just ask that you make sure that the probation officer is cool with whatever you're doing. Never good to upset them. Typically, they don't have any problems with it anyway. And then a 2005 change was that for any injuries related to a DUI, we also can't discharge those either. So what we do is we list all the debt. We would list the restitution. We would list the traffic ticket or the toll violation or the, bigger restitution as part of the bankruptcy, but you're still entitled to it.
What if something is converted to a civil judgment? Let's say there's a fine that went unpaid and is converted to a civil judgment. How does that come into play with bankruptcy?
All judgments are still listed. If they file an abstract of judgment, as you know, that goes against all the debtors' real estate in the county. So we do what's called a motion to avoid the lien, to get rid of that lien against the real estate or after acquired real estate. And it really depends on the type of debt. Some of the debt is treated as not dischargeable, and some of it is dischargeable. And I hate to say it because it sounds like we're just looking for attorney's fees, but sometimes the only way to be sure is to file something called an adversary proceeding, which is this side litigation, and it happens inside the bankruptcy court as an attachment to your bankruptcy proceeding. And there we say, hey, judge, we want to discharge this. So typically, if it's a couple thousand, we're not going to worry about it. Either it's going to be discharged or it's not, and you can go on a payment plan. If, however, it's something big, then it makes sense to pay an attorney to be able to get it discharged. Again, we all know that some of the DUI stuff isn't done, and some of it, again, it's a criminal restitution we can't get rid of. So those ones we would just say, okay, you've got to pay those. But the rest of it, generally, it's pretty easy to work out.
So how can potential clients contact you?
Thank you for asking. So I'm also on Facebook, so you can look up East Bay Bankruptcy Law and Financial Planning. I don't typically do videos because my system is not as good as Joanne's. Thank you. And then also my phone number is 925-752-1826, or you can email me, and all the information is again on my Facebook page and my website, which is eastbaybklaw.com.
Perfect. So if anybody has any follow-up questions or just wants to, run their situation past Corrine, I'm sure she would be happy to do a consultation with you. So contact her office. I have had the pleasure of being in Corrine's presence for several years now on a joint organization that we participate in called Earl Warren Inns of Court, and she has held leadership roles in that and is very serious about her business, serious about her planning, and serious about the way she runs the organization and handles her position. So I'm confident that clients will experience that same type of responsibility when she interacts with them
Thank you.
during the consult.
And the benefit, I do also offer free consultation. So whether that's over the phone or in my office. And most bankruptcy attorneys will do the same thing. So again, different areas of law, different things. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Corrine.
Thanks for having me.